Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new ProRevenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Don't Act Like I'm Deaf. One summer I worked at a small, family-owned Italian restaurant. It was super stressful because the manager had a tendency to micromanage, and one of the owners was a total idiot, and also not Italian, I might add. I was considering leaving and had already written up my 2 weeks notice because it honestly wasn't paying enough, and I couldn't get enough hours or tips to compensate. This is important later. One more thing to note, they required me to work outside, in Florida, during summer, in a full black, long-sleeved shirt and slacks. It was sickeningly hot and miserable outside, but inside the AC must have been set on 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyway, on with the show. I was opening one morning at the restaurant, and part of my responsibility was to put out the special board. I had the board propped up on a bench inside and was writing the specials down when the owner walked over. The conversation went something like this: D, what are you doing? Me, writing the specials on the board before I take 'em. D, you're supposed to be outside. Me, I was just finished. D, I know exactly what you're doing. Now get out there now. The restaurant wasn't even open for another 10 minutes, but I went outside, put the board on a table out there, and finished it. Of course this wasn't good enough for the owner, because it gets the table dirty before it's even been used, and he insisted I clean it again. Whatever. Another one of my responsibilities was to have the phone on me in case someone calls for a reservation or takeout order. No big deal, my shirt had a pocket it fit in. I guess I had taken it out at some point and left it outside because when I came back from cleaning a table inside, taking probably less than 3 minutes, the owner grabbed me roughly and said, "You need to keep the phone on you at all times." Honestly, that was it. He'd been up my back all morning, and had been rude to me countless times before, and he thought he could just grab me and scold me like a child? No. Wait. Thus the revenge began. Remember that 2 weeks notice I had? I went out for a smoke, took it out of my car, signed it effective immediately over the 2 weeks part, and brought it back in my shirt pocket. I had also texted my best friend what was about to go down. His reply, "Own that crap you idiot, I'll have cold beer waiting at home." And owned it I did. That afternoon the owner's parents were coming to eat with him. I sat them at a nice table, right next to the door to the inside. In the middle of their meal, the owner started complaining about my work to his parents, when I was at their table bringing them drinks. I let him think he hadn't heard me for a few minutes as I went inside and clocked out. When I came back outside, I put my notice on the table, gave him the phone and said, "You need to keep the phone on you at all times." And walked out. And remember that friend? He had his own plan for revenge. After he stopped laughing when I told him what I did, he told me about his own small justice he had carried out in my name. See, the restaurant was very well known around town for its pizzeria, a whole separate wing of the restaurant. They never had specials on pizza since it was a bestseller, and they especially didn't have free pizza, ever. My friend had called his prankster buddies, who in turn called the restaurant every 10 minutes afterwards asking about the free pizza night that evening, to which I heard the responses varied from polite to the level of, "No, this is Patrick," for the rest of the day. The next one is titled, Yell at Me for Doing My Job. I'll make you feel awkward in an elevator. I had graduated from college and was having trouble landing my first professional job. While I searched, I sold gym memberships by day and waited tables by night to make money and get out of my parents' house. It's my first week on the job at the gym. One of the front desk girls needed to use the bathroom and asked if I would cover. Just take their card, swipe it, and offer them a towel. If they don't have their card, look them up on the computer. Can do. I swipe a few people in. It's around 4:30 p.m. and some people are coming from work. An older guy, probably in his 50s, walks in. He is in his suit, indicating he is coming from work with a gym bag over his shoulder, and the angle at which he is walking indicates he has no plan at all attempt to swipe in. I professionally say, "Excuse me, sir, can I see?" and he glances at me and continues to walk into the gym. Keep in mind, I was new and I had gone to a 3-day training on different ways to sell the gym, and one of the key points was safety. Saying things like, "We only let members in, we have everyone's licenses and information on file, etc." I think of these points, so I come out from behind the desk, thinking I will gladly look this guy up if he forgot his card. As I approach him, I start to again say how I need to swipe him in, and he freaks the F out on me. It's been over a decade, but the main points were he comes here every day, he never swipes in, and everyone knows who he is, and I am an idiot, all as loud as he could be, in my face, and very aggressively. I am completely taken aback, embarrassed, and angry. The gym manager comes out of his office and settles things down and tells Gene he can head on in. The manager tells me Gene doesn't like to swipe in, and that when they see him, they just search for him and let him walk on. I'm upset, but the manager seems to just accept it as something that happened. I continue to work at the gym for 6 months, seeing Gene a few times a week and never saying a word to him. Eventually, while I was gone, one of the other sales reps took one of my prospects and signed them up. The sales girl told the prospect she was my manager and she would make sure I got the commission. She was not a manager and did not. The only reason I know is because the gym member told me. I call her out on it, she defends it. At this point, I had already put in my 2 weeks notice and the manager tells me not to come back in. Fine with me, that place was toxic. 4 to 5 months later I get a job at an asset management company and I am thrilled. I like my work and the boss who I directly report to is pretty high up in the company. I work on a building that has 16 floors and the company I work for occupies the floors 14, 15 and 16. I rode the elevator with my boss a few times and saw him interact with the big wigs from the other companies that are on the other floors of our building. They had an informal group that would often go golfing and to dinners with each other. One afternoon, I am waiting for the elevator to leave for the day when my boss comes out and gets on the elevator with me. We start to go down, picking up more and more people who are trying to get home, and 3 of them are executives in my boss's social circle. We stop at a floor and who should get on the elevator, complete with his gym bag, was Gene. He and my boss shake hands, begin discussing weekend plans, etc. My boss then introduces me to Gene. I've been thinking about this guy for months. Gene and I have already met. I say in a tone that dictates Gene and I have some history. My boss is taken aback by my tone. Internally, I hesitate for a moment, but my boss likes me and this guy mortified me. I had been in enough customer service, retail jobs since I was 15, I've taken a lot of crap. But this guy was one of the worst. It really stuck with me, because it was completely and totally undeserved. I was just trying to do my job. Gene is having trouble placing me. I worked at insert gym name. My first week there you berated me with obscenities at me at the top of your lungs because I asked you for your membership card when you walked into the gym. Gene's jaw has now dropped, my boss's head turned from me to Gene. Gene does not try to deny it, he stammers. Gene, I never bring my card and everyone there knows me so I always just walk in. Yep. The manager told me after our incident. Anyway, as I said, we've met. I just go back to riding the elevator. No one is speaking. Elevator gets to the ground floor and we all go our separate ways. It felt good, but I was regretting it now because we are going into the weekend and I will have to wait until Monday morning to see if my boss is upset with my behavior or not. I still waited tables, went right to work, told my coworkers what happened and we proceeded to get trashed in my honor once the restaurant closed. Monday morning I get to my desk and eventually, I have to pass my boss' office. He calls me in. He asks for more details about my encounter with Gene. I pretty much gave all the details in the elevator. It was my first week selling gym memberships. He knew of this job, it was on my resume. I was covering for a front desk person who needed to use the restroom. Gene walked in and I was told to scan everyone into the gym. I tried to tell Gene this and he went off on me. Honestly, I've been thinking about him for months and was blown away when he got on the elevator. I've never really said anything like that to anyone before and I didn't plan on it, it just came out as soon as I saw his face. My boss was blown away that it happened, and that Gene's excuse on the elevator was, "Oh yeah, I never bring my card." I said yeah, he could have said that. He could have explained it to me, could have told me his name, could have said talk to the manager, everyone knows me, but he chose to explode over something like this and a 22-year-old just trying to do his job. Eventually, my boss told the other executives and they cut Gene out of their circle. I got on the elevator a few times with me and Gene only and each time I was sure to give a smile and say, "Hi Gene." He got what he wanted, I never forgot who he was. The next one is titled, I switched the name of his mistress to his boss's name on his phone. My boyfriend cheated on me while I was pregnant. He travels during the week for work and was seeing another woman in another state. I changed his side chick's phone number in his phone to his female boss phone number, which I also found on his phone. So the mistress's name but the boss's phone number. I confronted him, threw a fit, everything to be expected. He wanted to fix things. I said I'd only consider forgiving him if he texts his mistress to tell her of his mistakes and that he's ending the relationship. I also demanded he let her know I'm 5 months pregnant. His message was much more than I had hoped for, and went something like this: "Hi, blank, this is blank, from Tinder. I made a huge mistake sleeping with you for the last few months. My girlfriend is 5 months pregnant and I don't know what I was thinking about bringing you to my hotel each week while I was supposed to be working. I love her and I want to fix things with her. I'm sorry I misled you and I need to end this affair with you because she caught me and I don't want to lose her. You were a mistake. Bye." That message went to his boss. I don't think she was happy to hear he was intimate with women he met online when he was supposed to be at his customer every day they paid for his travel. No idea what happened to him next. Screw him, I'll never speak to him again. But that revenge felt good. The next one is titled, "He was forced to say goodbye to his prized cowboy boots." During a bad patch in my now 41-year marriage, my husband and I separated and dated other people. This is about one of the guys that I dated. I was in college and was active in the school's student government. We used to go to seminars that included all of the community colleges in my state. I met this guy, Jim, from a different community college. Jim was a full-blooded Blackfoot. He was gorgeous, at least physically. We started dating and pretty quickly he asked me to be exclusive with him. It was my understanding that we were both exclusive. One night my friend, Sonny, and I drove the 65 miles to see Jim. When we got there I saw that his Chevy van was a-rocking. I went to the back, rear doors and opened them. He was in the act of intercourse with some woman I later found out was named Twyla. I quite loudly told him to pull out and get out of the van. He did and she crouched in the back of the van with the doors locked. I guess she thought I was gonna attack her. I wasn't. She had thought they were in an exclusive relationship also. Anyway, my friend said we had to leave to drive back home. Jim jumps in the car to go back with us. Now here's the revenge part. Jim was a pretty well-known local rodeo rider. During his most important rodeo, the first prize was a pair of custom-made snakeskin boots and $500 prize money. The money was long gone, but the boots were his pride and joy. So, Jim didn't take the time to put his boots on before he got in the car. He just laid them in the car seat. As we are driving, Jim is trying to explain that it's not his fault that he cheated. He said that the distance between us was a major factor in his decision to cheat. Additionally, he is telling me that if I ever cheated on him, his anger would be uncontrollable and I would pay dearly. As you can imagine, that upset me big time. It so happened that we had to cross a big bridge on the way to my house. The bridge was about 35 miles from where he lived and his van. As we crossed the bridge, I quickly gathered up his boots and threw them out the window, over the bridge rail, into the river. Once we got across the bridge, Sonny stopped the car, hers, and told Jim to get out. We left him there standing by the side of the road, in February, without any shoes, boots, on his feet. By the way, this was years before cell phones. I didn't hear from him for about 3 years. By this time, hubby and I were back together. Jim called me, wanted to meet up and talk about getting back together. I let him talk for maybe 15 minutes. I asked him about Twyla. Seems she dumped his butt the same night. Needless to say, we did not get back together and I haven't spoken to him since. I did hear that he had moved to Texas to be a cowboy. The next one is titled, "He Had to Walk 3 Miles." This was before everyone had cell phones and people were still relying on payphones. I was working as a waitress on holiday Thursday night. Holiday Thursdays, I could pull $300 or more in tips. 2 hours into my shift and right when things started to get busy, I get a call from the babysitter saying that my husband had not come to pick up the kids. I asked if he had called and she said no. I called his work and he had left at the regular time. I knew his manager and I asked if he left with someone and she told me yes, that he had left with a woman he worked with to give her a ride home. I had already had an inkling he was having an affair with her. Anyway, long story short, I left work and picked up the kids. When he got home he gave me his lame excuse and later admitted he was having an affair. The first thing I did was get in his car and leave. He hated when I drove his car, which is why I took his car. I told him I had to think. His car's gas gauge didn't work, so we had figured out that his car on a full tank could go 300 miles. Once the mileage got close to 300, we had to put gas in. I noticed it was close to 300 and took a chance and drove around for a while. Then I flipped the mileage to 0. Drove a couple more miles to make it look like I had filled the gas tank, and then drove for a while more before I came back home. Knowing the next morning he would be leaving early for work, and his work at the time was about 45 miles away. When I got home, I packed myself up and my daughter and went to bed. In the morning he went off to work. I got in my car, drove my stepsons to school, gave them big hugs and told them I would see them soon. Then I went to live with my mum until something else could get worked out. My ex got about 15 miles before his car ran out of gas. It was raining and he was on a rural road that wasn't very busy. He had to walk about 3 miles in the rain until he found a payphone. He had someone from work pick him up. I called later to let him know he would have to leave work early regardless of if his car was on the side of the road or not, because he had to pick his sons up, and that was that. The last one is titled, "The Girl I Replaced Her With Became My Wife Not Long Later." My best revenge was to meet my now wife of 35 years a week after I told my first serious girlfriend to have a good life. See, before I met my ex, I had a few girlfriends but nothing serious. I was what a lot of people called a dog. But I was a dog that told the truth. I never told one of the many girls I dated I loved them or that I was going to marry them. In fact, it was just the opposite. I always told them up front, I'm just here for a good time, as a song goes. It worked for me, as many a girl said that I was a challenge that they were willing to take. I would just smile and nod my head. I was a young single E5 in Germany for 2 years, and for my first year in Hawaii, I was having fun with a capital F. Well, fast forward, I meet this girl in Hawaii. We hit it off. She was a former model and had everything going for her. She was gorgeous, smart, funny, the total package. After about a month or so, I told her that I was developing feelings for her and I was willing to take a chance on being just a one-woman guy. She was pretty happy too and said she wanted to be just with me. Later on, we'd even talk of a ring and possibly making plans for the next year. Now we were together a little over 6 months. She said she had never felt this way about anyone, and I said in my mind and to married friends, wow, this is how it really supposed to be, right? That is, until she had to go home, Utah, for a family emergency. I called her one day and a boy, an old flame, answered the phone. I heard the shower running, and I then heard her say to the boy, "That was amazing, let's just skip going out for dinner and stay in for dessert." I had heard this same line before from her when we were dating or together, and I knew exactly what dessert meant. I told the guy, "Hey dude, have a good time and tell her name that Alan said, have a great life." I, of course, was upset. I later heard that the shower incident happened after a lot of alcohol was involved, but really it does not matter. Not even a good week later, I met my now wife of 35 years. It was her first day in Hawaii as an operating room tech in the army. We met because I had sworn off girls. All my soldiers laughed when I said this, and I was actually playing basketball in the middle of the quadrangle where the barracks were. At that time, replacement, or where new soldiers come into an army post, was located in the same barracks. 2 months later, we were married, and before our first anniversary, we had our first kid. It was more than 9 months, as I know some of you were thinking we had to get married, but we didn't. Ha! Now for the revenge part. Not long after my now wife and I started dating, I was pulling CQ or charge of quarters when all of a sudden my ex-girlfriend shows up. She was crying, telling me how she messed up her life worse than anything she's ever imagined and how she would do anything to get me back. I listened quietly, then said, "You did screw up, but you know what, it really turned out okay for me." I thanked her for taking that shower, and then I said, "As a gentleman, I'm going to walk you back out to your car." We stopped at the soda machine because she said she was thirsty. She then point blank asked me, "Have you made love to her yet?" I said, "No." She then kinda smiled. I said, "No, I love you, I've made love to her." Mic drop. Thanks for listening.